guys, welcome in to the Radioactive Paper Cuts podcast. I, of course, am Josh Kennedy, joined by my good buddy Noah King Bates. Noah, say hello to the wonderful people at home.
Hello, hello. How's everyone doing?
I hope they're doing well, Noah. They can't respond to us, but
I
I
know.
just gotta hope they're gonna be okay. But hey, guys, we're about to do our first ever comic book club, and I will say this was one of the reasons I started this podcast in the first place because I wanted to get in on some comic book action, and hadn't really had the opportunity yet, nor someone else who was willing to read the same amount of comic books as me. So I got my buddy Noah now, and we're gonna start doing these monthly, and it's gonna be sick. And this is episode 1. We did Batman the Imposter. It is a graphic novel from DC Black Label. It's been out roughly a month or something like that, but we're about to get to it. Noah, why don't you give me your overall thoughts, and then we'll get into the specifics here.
I very much enjoyed this. I've been reading a lot of Black Label lately. It's just all of them catch my ear. I love the psychological tone that almost all the Black Label has.
Yeah.
And because of it, like from Imposters, I jumped into like 3 other Batman as well as non-Batman stories. So once you start reading comics and you really find your swing, you just start pumping them out. I can't tell you how many I've gone through in the past 2 weeks.
I'm glad, man. Yeah, I've been on that train for a while now. I just can't stop, won't stop. But this one was fun. DC Black Label, I think, is my favorite comic book. I don't know if they're not their own label, but they have a specific
publishing
word
almost.
publishing. Yeah, whatever it is. It's my favorite. I like some of the stuff they're doing on the main label. Like I've been reading Nightwing forever, and I Am Batman's been pretty cool. They've got a Joker book I've been reading. DC's been doing fine, but their Black Label I think is like my personal favorite, and it sounds like you're feeling the same way.
Oh yeah, I pretty much call it. I think that I pretty much just call it DC HBO Max because it's just that dark and gritty that I've always wanted that I'm not getting, but I love it. Because of it and because of Moon Knight coming out, I just started picking up Marvel stuff that is like a lot darker. So DC Black Label's helping Marvel because it is making me want to find dark and gritty on both sides. And it's not just Batman. I know we talk a lot about Batman in the Black Label.
He's the main guy over at Black Label. He's not the only one. They do have plenty of other good graphic novels, like the Joker and Harley book are both pretty cool.
Metal and Wonder Woman, like
they've got a new one coming out. I just saw an ad for that maybe we'll cover on here. It's called Rogues, but it's by Black Label, and it's like older rogues from Central City. The Flash's villain, and it looks really good.
Yes, I saw that, and that does look really good. I'm very intrigued by that one. So I'm excited for every Black Label that we cover. I feel like until I find a real myth, I'm gonna always just pick up a Black Label.
Yep. We chose this one specifically, partially due to release date and partially because I had been reading ads and interviews about it for a while, and the concept just seemed really cool. And I don't think it's really been done in this fashion before. So I was glad to kind of really dive in here. I'm gonna pull up. Oh, by the way, this is going to be our first video Spotify podcast. So if you guys want to see some of the stuff and follow along, we'll be on YouTube as well. Right now, I've got the cover on it, and just the cover kind of expresses exactly what I'm looking for in this. It's very simple, but it's essentially got like a Batman in the forefront, got a cracked background, and essentially like a mirror, obviously representing a broken image of Batman himself. Mattson Tomlin was the author or the writer here, in which he did a pretty good job. But I think the highlight of this graphic novel, and I think you're on the same page, was the crazy artwork in the paneling that they did throughout this graphic novel. It is absolutely beautiful to behold. I can't even give this guy enough praise. And that was Andrea Sorrentino. I believe he's an Italian gentleman. I read up on him a little bit. And then Jordie Bellair did the inking and probably some coloring and that type of thing. But tell me what you thought about the art there, Noah, or just things in general.
I mean, even just I love the simplistic nature of the cover because it tells the story without telling you the story, because we have the imposter, the fact that there are 2 Batman, one being broken, one being kind of in the forefront. The little symbol of white, like it tells the after you've read it and you look back at this picture, you're like, yep, that gives me everything that I want in a cover. It's simplistic, but it also is really, really well done. Like you said, Sorrentino, I'm sure you saved the pictures that we were talking about,
Oh,
but
we're gonna go through them on this. So you guys are gonna like witness the beauty because I have them all screenshot here, and we'll pull them up periodically throughout the book here.
oh yes, and I broke my notes down from book 1, 2, and 3, so I very much enjoyed the story that I got from it.
That's cool. I actually went a different route about it. I put little notes that I want to discuss topics about the whole thing as I was going. So this will be kind of cool, and we'll be able a couple different structures, be able to really talk this thing out. And this was definitely a deserving graphic novel to get this type of coverage. Like, I don't know if it's super popular, this specific graphic novel, because it's not involved in the greater DC stories. It's definitely a standalone type of deal. It's not to the quality of like the Dark Knight Returns or the Killing Joke and things along those lines. But like, this is a pretty good book. It's better than the average, I would say.
Oh yeah, yeah. I would definitely say that it is up there in terms of telling a cohesive, really well-grounded story as maybe not as big as the Killing Joke, but it is up there. It is something that is a great standalone that someone could pick up who doesn't read a lot of Batman and get a full Bruce Wayne story.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, we already said that it's not set in the DC universe, so there were a couple of changes to the character. Which let you want to just jump into those right now?
Yeah, so I mean, one that I really thought was intriguing was Alfred, his father figure, leaving him
Yeah,
early.
Alfred bailed though, dude. He's like, oh man, this kid's a lot, bro. And we'll get into the Leslie Tompkins of it, but yeah, the Alfred Pennyworth relationship is definitely a huge deviation from what we've seen in other Batman stories.
Yeah, it also looks like there is a deviation in terms of Gordon. I don't know if maybe I was reading too fast, but I don't know if he's dead or in jail or something
He
happened. So
he's fired. He's no longer in the department. I think they touch on it a little bit later on saying how he left them a mess and this, that, and the other thing. But I don't. I believe they said he was doing something else. So yeah, he's not dead, but he's not in the picture at all. He's
yeah,
only mentioned in this book. Leslie Tompkins, she was portrayed as African American in this one. She's white in a lot of other stories. Obviously, she's not a major character, so it wasn't even anything that I gave a second thought to, other than the way they drew that character was gorgeous. And like the
mhm.
introduction with the psychiatrist, well, Dr. Leslie Tompkins, the paneling for that scene was pretty good as well. I didn't take a picture of that one, but it's really cool. How'd you feel about Leslie Tompkins?
I very much enjoyed her being not on par with Alfred under any circumstances, but I do like her being the new Pennyworth in this story of being like the voice of reason, the voice of listening, the voice of understanding, but also knowing that she can't do anything to stop him. So all she can really do is listen and try and be there for him because everyone else failed him, like usually is how Alfred is seen.
Yeah, definitely. It was cool because it showed Leslie Tompkins knowing Bruce in being kind of his psychiatrist as a child as well. So she watched the development of this character, and I don't know if it's a deviation or just something that's not truly explored in DC proper. But she named off some of Batman's mental health issues,
Yes.
which was pretty awesome. I made the list here. She diagnosed him with anxiety, OCD, and she said he was possibly on the spectrum, and he definitely suffers from PTSD. Those
Hmm.
all kind of line up with really what makes sense for the character because you got to think of how obsessed Bruce is with the like fighting crime and all of this stuff, and like he always thinks of the worst case scenario and he prepares for it. Like that's his whole thing, and that kind of falls in line with all of those disorders. So, how did you feel about them expressing these the mental health of it all?
I really enjoyed it because I love the fact that they focus on the fact of like when we think of Batman's rogue gallery, we all know the fact that they all go to Arkham Asylum, or a majority of them go to Arkham Asylum. So to hear him be diagnosed, to hear what he has and what made him a person who dresses up in a funny costume and go out and patrol at night is super intriguing, because he's one tick away from just being a villain. He really is. Even
Yeah,
and
there's
they really established that in this story with his anger issues. Like he could be a villain. The way that it is written, he is just legit one bad day. If we want to go all Joker on it, he's one bad day from just snapping.
Yeah, if we put this Batman in the situation of the Killing Joke, a la Commissioner Gordon, then yeah, this guy's going bad pretty easy. Let me bring up an example of some cool artwork.
Oh,
They had this bat which was pretty iconic looking, and I didn't take the full screenshot, but it had wings spread out and having the paneling kind of look interesting, uh, visually awesome. Kind of lends itself to like the fear that Batman's really putting into the villains of this specific story.
so some of the notes that I put, at least for book one, because I'm pretty sure this is part of the first one.
Yep, yep.
Um, I was one of the first things that I wrote was year two, because I was like, okay, this is clearly, like, and especially after watching
The Batman.
the Batman, I was like, yeah, this is like year two or like year three, because he's still bad, kind of like he's still screwing up at times, like he did at the beginning of the play, and that's how he get play the beginning of the book, and that's how he gets wounded and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, this is like the Batman, but with like
Yeah,
one deviation.
I put a note in here that based on like kind of the artwork and the overall vibe, I was like, was this inspired by Pattinson? Because the higher ups at DC probably got early viewings of the Batman for sure, and if they wanted something maybe related to like kind of similar to that Batman, this really would have matched that pretty well. I mean, that's just speculation, but I can see
Mhm.
it.
I also wrote down very Law and Order, especially when they do the deviation to really start focusing on the detective.
Yeah, Detective Blair Wong. I wrote some
Yes.
notes about her as well, so we'll talk about her shortly. This is about where she's introduced, isn't it?
Yeah,
Kind of
yeah.
right after. Yep. So I mean, essentially, the start of this book is just kind of explaining the differences, like Alfred bringing Bruce into the psychiatrist, realizing that he's not going to be able to help this child, and he gives up on him, and then Bruce is kind of left to his own devices. Leslie Tompkins helps when she can, but Batman goes about the Batman story, and then we get to explore a new telling as well. Like, just yeah, I mean, the story itself is what I mean, like what we're trying to get to.
Oh yeah. Um, I also wrote, and this is kind of like not a cliffhanger, but it is like near the end of oh, such good art.
Yeah,
So I think that's my second favorite panel. My other one, I think, is the one that you'll show a little bit later. I think it's in book two. But the rat catcher, I love the little villains that they added that
dude, I put
helped.
a note on both of them. Both him and the ventriloquist, like they're
Yes.
digging deep in the rogues gallery, and I'm here for it, dude. We don't need to like we need more stories like this because a lot of the characters that still exist in the DC proper universe, they're not mentioned anymore. I mean, so a lot of them were made as like 1970s throwaway villains, and then they get a weird, dark and gritty backstory later in the 2000s, and then they're mostly forgotten about. Like, if you asked a movie fan right now who the ventriloquist is, they would have no idea. They'd have no frame of reference.
Hmm. But you ask them how many Riddlers, how many Penguins, how many Jokers we've got, and then they can name you all of those. How many? The fact that we've gotten multiples of so many when we haven't even gotten ones that are still pretty prominent and great Clayface. We haven't gotten a single Clayface in the non-TV show Gotham storyline.
Yeah, it's that one's a CGI one, but I mean they have CGI monsters anyway. Like we got Starro, why can't we have Clayface? You know?
Right, exactly. I mean, we got Killer Croc in the Suicide Squad, but that's like in reality, that was just kind of pure luck. The fact that they just wanted a giant monster at one point. That's it.
Yeah, they didn't that character was kind of underutilized, but we all know the problems with the first Suicide Squad movie. But
Exactly.
I did make a note about Ratcatcher. He kind of seems to be inspired by Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. Did you also feel that way while going through this?
I did. I did feel
Yeah.
like that. I was like, okay, well, they're just making him the Joker, but it's just the rat. I thought that was cool, and I really I mean, by reading the first book, you can kind of tell that the Batman he befriends isn't the right one, but they do a really cool job of not like spelling it out completely. You just have to really understand the character of Batman to really understand, like, oh, this, or like understand storytelling and be like, this is the imposter that he befriends. Because he at first you just see him help him like through the sewer. You don't see that Batman do anything villainous right off the bat. I think doesn't he protect him?
Yeah, he protects him from getting beat up by some guys that were picking on him for pretty much no reason and saying he smelled like rats and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it wasn't anything special, but yeah, this paneling that I've got up on the screen right now, it might be my favorite art in the comic book. There's some other very good ones as well, but I love you can see a little shot of Leslie Tompkins right in the middle there, and then I believe that's Alfred in the top left, and in I think one of my favorite things that they did throughout this book is they had the panels, and even when it wasn't completely relevant to the story, they would put a motif in the background behind it. There were a couple different instances where they had like an angel sitting behind the panels just to add a little bit of pizzazz. It wasn't like necessary, but I appreciated it throughout it. Like they'd have they had an angel in one, and then the next page it was an upside down angel, and then there was like a chess piece, and then upside down chess piece. But just little tiny things that you wouldn't think to do as an artist or any sort of designer for comic books, and it just really gets thrown in there.
Yeah, I think that what this one does compared to other comic books is when you think about the fact of like old school comics where it's panel, 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 and it's just squares and sometimes triangles and stuff like that. This one does away with that in a very beautiful way where the art is not just the panel itself, but what's behind the panel, how the panels tell the story, and the fact that the story can be told not just by a square, but by bats, by puzzle pieces, as we'll see later on in one of them. It's just really nice that the art is flowing in and out of the panels themselves.
Yeah. Let's touch on we already mentioned her, but let's talk about Detective Blair Wong.
Yes.
Not a character that we know of from the regular DC universe, but she's another GCPD officer. Her parents were also shot in front of her, and her and Batman kind of have a similar thought process or belief system. And it's not like it hasn't been done before with Batman, like kind of having some sort of connection with a woman like that. But the fact that she was in the GCPD made it kind of cool. And then, I wouldn't call it a trope, but we've seen it before where she's meant to investigate him, and then he has to kind of reveal himself as Batman. One thing I appreciated about this iteration of Batman is he's a game player. He's playing 3D chess, 4D chess throughout the whole thing. He's like, well, if I get involved with this police officer who's in on the investigation of me, but it's actually Batman the imposter. So if I get close to her, I get access to all this stuff. So he was being very manipulative, which is a different thing for Batman.
Yeah, I put in a note. I put in a couple of notes for this because it was definitely in part 2 that we were really seeing it in. It's the amount of manipulate. Like we know that Batman usually is like super manipulative in terms of like tricking people into believing like I'm not Batman, I'm Bruce Wayne, I'm Playboy. But to watch him, like it was giving me like Netflix U vibes. The way that he was trying to get her to fall for him and then end up falling for her. And that's the saving grace, is him saying that, like, no, I am in love. Because at first I was like, oh, you are a villain. You are a bad person.
Yeah, he was being super manipulative.
But then they turned it around and had him show his true feelings. I was like, okay,
I've got a zoomed in version of this as well, but this is one of my favorite pieces of artwork in the book as well.
Yes.
And also a perfect example of what I was talking about on how there's a whole nother picture behind the panel. I'll actually pull up the smaller ones so you can also see our faces a little bit here, but it has like a demon in the background. I love the black, white, gray, and then there's the pop of red in both the umbrella and her jacket. Like, for some reason, that's always been one of my favorite art styles. So it's Banksy-esque, I suppose, but it's just really cool. But yeah, Bruce fell in love with Blair, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, we have to take it at, but I truly, at one point I was like, is this genuine, or is this like him trying to get everyone to believe it? But at the end, I truly felt like it was genuine. But at first I was like, oh, now he's just trying to manipulate.
Yep.
Yeah, because after you see that you're a manipulator, it's really hard to believe you're not trying to manipulate everybody.
Yep. That's 100% a fact. And, what do we do? We just kind of like embrace Batman as being awesome and not a total piece of shit.
We hope.
Yeah.
So I made a note, and I want to know if you agree. So I put down the note of, this is giving me Daredevil season 3 vibes.
Yo, yeah, I didn't even put that together. Yeah, that's a good point. Speaking of Daredevil, I've been reading his Marvel run in the current situation, and the author Chip Zdarsky. Shout out to that guy. I mean, no, it's not the comic we're covering, but like it's some of the best comic book stories I've read in a while. So,
I just picked up Devil's Reign, and that
I'm almost I'm done with issue 1 through 5, and there's a part 6 coming.
Yeah, I picked that up because I really want to read the Moon Knight part of Reign.
And I think he's in a separate one of the other titles, not the main Devil's Reign run. They're doing another one of those things where it's multiple. It's like a crossover story, which is always fun in comic books. But
like Shadowlands, which is one of my favorite Marvel ones. That is Daredevil inspired.
Yeah, but yeah, we're talking about Batman right now in the Imposter.
What did you think about the overall reveal?
I don't want to like hit on that. I mean, we can hit on it now, but like I was overall not super pumped about it. It's like when the Imposter's name is in the title, you expect some ground-breaking revelation to see who the other Batman is, but that's not what this story is about at all, really.
No, I will give you that. The Imposter himself was a very secondary thought in terms of the overall Batman figuring out who he is, not necessarily the fact that there's this other Batman running around. He almost seemed like, to a degree, it almost seemed like a psychological thing. Like, I would have been more intrigued if this other Batman did not exist.
Yeah, something like that would have been interesting as well. Yeah, there was a secondary story. I guess I don't even know if you want to call it the primary story, but Wesker, which is the father of Arnold Wesker, the ventriloquist, he essentially owns the Gotham PD, which very much a Gotham trope where it seems like everybody owns the PD there, but whatever. It was fine. It was just classic crime story. He's trying to control the city with what he's thinking and things along those lines. How'd you feel about that whole plot thing?
Like you said, it's a Gotham story. I would love to one day just see a GCPD story where they're not corrupt, because I want to know at this point why haven't they just shut down police?
Yeah, honestly, like if any police need to be defunded, it's the Gotham City Police, because they're just paying criminals. That's all they're doing over there.
That's the best story ever. Just Gotham defunded, and it's just normal. I'm like, bro, yeah, actually.
But you know how sad that would be though, because like Jim Gordon would keep his job, and he has no money to do anything. And then there's not money coming in from the criminal lords because all the corrupt people got booted. So yeah. Oh man. Well, that's not this story. At least.
No, I thought that the addition of that, outside of seeing the ventriloquist and the overall reveal of the ventriloquist trying to, oh my god, my favorite art.
Yeah, I was pulling it up. I was waiting for you. Yeah, the ventriloquist. He wasn't even. That's the thing, is like the only two important characters in this whole story are Batman and Blair Wong, which is an interesting way to do a story. I wasn't upset about it, but the name, I guess, could have been different. Whatever. Yeah, right on the screen right now, if you guys are on Spotify or on YouTube, you can see that it's a bunch of puzzle pieces, but it's also paneling. And then it's got Batman half his face with half a bat with a deep red in the background. So another thing where I really like where they do black, gray, white color pops. Like they got the pink up in the corner with Blair talking, the blue in the bottom with Bruce talking. So just overall, super sick artwork. You said this is your favorite, so I just want to hear why.
So I really love it because it's when we think of someone playing mind games, we always think of chess. But I also love the fact that puzzle pieces are a symbol of autism. And as someone who's on the spectrum, and the fact that they believe that he's on the spectrum, the thing that I really enjoy is using this as the motif of putting stuff together and figuring out the clues. And a detective finds clues, puts pieces together. So the fact that the world's greatest detective, Wong, who is a detective, are putting these puzzle pieces together to solve this mystery, as well as it just being a motif of the mind, I think is really, really well done.
That's really cool. I didn't even put together the two autism things, even though it was referenced that he's possibly on the spectrum. So yeah, just another cool, I'm sure that was intentional. There's no way it wasn't. So just gorgeous artwork. I just want to look up this artist and read his other comics, which that is a complete deviation from how I normally feel about comic books. Like I can if it's a good story, I can deal with crappy art.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, but I mean, this is a case of where it's a decent story, but just gorgeous artwork.
Yes, I mean, I could flip through the panels and the pages and not read a single thing and just marvel at everything.
I almost want to
drawn.
buy this graphic novel because you and I both read it on our phones, but I also want to buy the physical copy just to have it and see how it looks like all printed out and stuff. But we'll get there.
I legit just want a poster of this art. Like, this is so beautifully done.
That'd be so cool, especially if they got rid of all the dialogue boxes. I mean, obviously they're necessary to the story, but if you just had the artwork, yeah, that would look really cool. Anyway, we'll keep this train rolling here. Did you have any other notes that you want to talk about kind of in the book 2 middle section here?
So the book 2 middle section, I know I had
maybe
something.
Early 3, not really sure where we are in the story.
Yeah, I did I wrote down ventriloquist. Well, I put, because we had been talking about it, Bruce's mother connections, because they talk a little bit about the fact the Arkham Asylum or the fact of like his mental instability as well as his mother's. Like, I thought that was
because she's in Arkham. Yeah, they another one where I don't know if this story. I'm gonna actually have to do my research. Where the first time I ever saw it was in the Batman Telltale games. I don't know if you've played those.
Yep.
But yeah, that's the first appearance of like Martha Arkham I've ever seen. There's other versions, obviously. Martha Kane is the primary one that people know of. But this story also embraced the Martha Arkham of it all. So another one of those things where, yeah, it's a side story, but it does follow some of the, really important things about the characters.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that really helps paint the fact that some mental illness is hereditary.
Right.
And it's a really intriguing way of connecting it without having to do a full bag. It's like, hey, his mother also had this stuff. He seems to be showing similar things. Outside of that, like, I don't know. I just thought that was a really beautiful connection, and I thought that was a really cool way of continuing the story. And like you said, this is almost like a prequel or a sidestep of the Batman, where we learned in that movie the similar things.
I agree. Yeah, let me pull up another artwork. I think this was a cover. I just like the duality of this one. There's not even a whole lot going on here, but the white pops for the bat. Again, if you want to see this, just check out the video or read the comic book yourself. But the level of detail is ridiculous to me. Do you see the motif behind the motif? He's got like some
like a
cathedral-looking artwork. Yeah, like behind him, because I think he's standing on, I believe, an angel gargoyle type thing in this specific instance. But the fact that he's pulling his cape down with his left hand, but it's actually just exposing the sky. Honestly, if I was going to pick a poster, I might pick this one just to have hanging. You know what? If I could find it online, I'm going to hang that behind me on this new wall in my studio here, because it's that cool looking. It's almost like vaguely samurai too.
Oh yeah, I can see that. I what I really enjoy about this art and just the overall, I really love the duality because again, it's this weird duality where they talk about an imposter, they talk about two Batmans, but in the real scope of things, it is just Bruce and Batman. The imposter does not matter.
Right. That is the best part of Batman Forever. Is where he actually like embraced the duality thing in that movie. One of my favorites as a kid, not so great anymore, but Val Kilmer did a pretty good job of embracing the Batman or Bruce Wayne versus Batman mythos of it all. But yeah, just wanted to pull up some more highlighted artwork here. This one, some paneling, and now we can talk a little bit about ventriloquist if you would like.
Yes. I so first of all, I love the fact that they understand people who read this comic and stuff. Like when I kept seeing the duality, I think there's at one point they show like a coin. I love how they reference other Batman villains without
Yeah,
never talking about them.
I love
Like
the Harley bit of his because hers is, clearly she's the diamonds, and
yes.
they made the panels into these diamonds, and it's definitely done intentionally. It's not like he's just like, oh, this is a cool shape. You're like, you know what you're doing.
Yeah, we know. And then again, I feel like there was like a coin, or the fact that it's just constant duality where I'm just like Two-Face. Like every
Always Two
time I
Face.
think of duality, I'm just like, oh yeah, Two-Face. So the fact
Yeah.
that that's there and he's never mentioned just always makes you know that this world is so much bigger, where you're like, I wonder how this person lives in this world, and I wonder how they would be introduced. Like the story behind in this world, the Batman imposter universe seems so intriguing and so rich and
I
full.
was just gonna, yeah. Well, let's broaden on that a little bit. How would you feel about them continuing, like making a sequel to this? Because Black Label has been known to do that if the title's popular enough. They did it with Batman: The White Knight. They
Mm-hmm.
did a sequel to that, and now
And
they're
now they're
doing
doing
another one with Batman Beyond, which I sent you a video of. The DC was
yes.
advertising it. Added it to my pull list immediately. It's delayed, but it'll be here next week. But I think it'd be cool to adventure into this universe a little bit more because obviously there are deviations from the true Batman mythos, the Alfred thing being one of the highlights. But this Bruce Wayne kind of seems more unhinged than the rest. So how would you feel about seeing more?
As long as they really delve into the mental complexities of mental illness, I think I would love it. I don't want this to be, if they continue, I don't want the first book to just be, oh, he's trying to figure out what his mental illness is and if he should still be Batman. I want the psychiatrist to constantly be trying to get him better, to make him realize that Batman is needed, but not in the way that he thinks.
Yeah, that was a highlight of the story as well. Like the Leslie Tompkins character was very strong and pronounced throughout all of these books, and I just really appreciated her. I like how she gave him the kind of the ultimatum that he has to get here every day before dawn. Like that gives Bruce some sense of structure, keeps him to where he's not always Batman. He at least has to come there, talk out his feelings, and I think that's exactly what she was going for, obviously. But
Mm-hmm.
really cool. Anyway, back on ventriloquist, because this is kind of our introduction to the idea of Scarface and other puppets. Some creepy dolls here, and this is Bruce investigating Wesker Tower, I believe, or maybe it was one of their apartments, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
It was truly seeing a broken Arnold Wesker, which he kind of is shown as either that or he's very timid, like in the animated series. But for the most part, he seems pretty mentally unstable.
Right.
And Scarface kind of has control there. We didn't actually get Scarface, which I thought was an interesting way to do the ventriloquist.
I think that that's because he's not the ventriloquist
Not yet.
yet.
Yeah, I think so too. But it's kind of cool that we got to see almost an origin story because
Yes.
eventually Bruce kind of does his best to help that like Arnold when his father's arrested or whatever it was once it was exposed at the end of the story here.
Which
Yeah,
is another reason why I think the continuation of the story is so good, because to see possibly Tompkins try and help, and sadly, not every person can be saved. Sadly, it just doesn't work out. Or I would love to see the growth of Scarface, and if she teaches him to use the puppets to talk out his anger, as some psychiatrists do, where they have you, talk it out through, usually it's with children, but I mean, I would love to see different levels of I think Batman and his rogues are so interesting when it comes to mental health and looking at psychiatry as a thing. So I really want the Black Label to focus on that, because they did such a good job in Joker and Harley.
Yeah, I think that is one of their highlights as a label, or it's called an insight, something like that. It's got a name, but here's some more cool artwork,
Uh,
some trippy circles.
Hard to read that one.
Yeah, like it looks neat. I don't know if this one's an example of the best artwork, but again, you can see in the background of it all, there's another black and white motif going on, like in the bottom right corner, in the right side, and then the bottom left side a little bit. It almost looks like they're going for a mirror look, but also like the infinite stairs. And then there's almost like a
Ghoul.
Aztec looking coin right in the middle. I don't know if it's something like that, but it's just another interesting choice. And this was kind of where Bruce and the detective are. I think they're embracing their feelings for each other in this scene here.
Okay.
But another cool one. What do you got to say about this whole thing here?
Like I said, even like when I was reading it for the first time, I really enjoyed it. It was a little, that was, like I said, I could look at all of these pictures and be fascinated. But one, not gripe, but one little thing that I have to say is, because the artwork is so complex and so well paneled, sometimes it's hard to read because you're looking at everything. The words kind of mush together, and you sadly don't, the reading the lines isn't the important thing. It's like taking everything in at once. So that's one of very few things that I can say I had a trouble with this with. But it's completely overshadowed by the fact that the artwork and the story itself do mesh in a beautiful way. It's just sometimes the artwork outshined the writing to the point where I didn't care what they said.
What the words were saying, you just thought it looked really cool. Yeah, I'm with you. And they did make some choices, like I already showed this picture, but as you can see, this was an art highlight. There's one sentence says, "I'm falling in love." So, yeah, just really neat artwork. I was glad to read it. I guess other things to touch on. What else you got, Noah? You got plenty of notes there.
Yeah. So with book 3, I thought that it went like a mile a minute once they finally, like, because I guess we can now kind of talk about the imposter himself.
Yeah, we can do that now. Yep.
So the imposter, I mean, when I saw him in the first panel that he was shown in, I was like,
that's relevance. Yeah, I didn't know he's gonna be the imposter immediately, but I was like, there's no reason that guy would be there without being important.
Yeah, the way that he was talking at the beginning, I was like, oh, you're the imposter. Like, it just dawned. It wasn't even. I was like, yeah, crooked cop becomes crooked Batman. Like that
adds up.
I was like, I'm not wearing hockey. Like, that's all I thought in the back of my head. Like,
I'm not wearing hockey pads. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, this was it wasn't needed, I guess, but that's okay. I liked him enough. He had the physicality of Batman, and Batman with an AR was kind of an interesting image.
I do think that, yeah, because he was a police officer, he was a detective and stuff like that. Watching him, he was one of the few people who were like going toe to toe with this Batman, the one that, kind of trained himself and is not as like mystic, going off and fighting ninjas type Batman that we sometimes get. I was like, yeah, this is an equal fight. This is a fight that makes sense between the two of them compared to the usual Batman that we get.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, the imposter, he was fine. I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying that he wasn't a highlight of the story. Here's an alternate cover where it kind of just shows Detective Blair Wong facing off against Batman with the cityscape. This isn't even the same artist, but another cool visual.
Yeah, I will say that I really, really enjoyed Wong, even though
surprisingly, not like, I mean, it's hard to introduce a character like that and have the audience buy into them and actually be like root for her to be kind of with Bruce. Because a lot of the times she's just like, she kind of seems like a throwaway. But no, she had some depth to her, which I appreciated.
Yeah, and I mean they did some tropey things with the whole, hey, if you're gonna shoot me, but I gotta go and save this. I was like, shoot him. Like,
Yeah,
I would
yeah,
love
honestly.
I love the skewing. I love when they like take something that you're like, oh yeah, they're definitely gonna do this motif and they don't. Or they
Yeah,
do this cliche and they don't. So a part of me wanted her to be that cop.
yeah, fair enough. Uh,
But
she
love
helped
wins in
Bruce
the end.
eventually.
Yeah, I
That
was
was
gonna say
interesting. She assisted him eventually, so that was a fun arc to the story. I actually don't remember what this is. The last one I screenshot, and I wanted to see what it was exactly. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this was kind of the end of the whole story, but I screenshot it just because it looked beautiful. But what other notes did you have on book 3? I'll leave this pulled up, but let's talk it out.
I think that they left it up into it's a good ending of this story, but again, the world that they've built is definitely not done.
Yeah, I just hope they do something with it,
Yeah. I
because
don't I don't know. I feel like do you think if they continued it we would see her again? Do you think Wong themselves is needed?
I don't know. She really could just be a throwaway, and I guess that would be all right. But I bought into her enough in this story, so she did what she was supposed to. I mean, they're comic books, so they could totally go like, you know what? She's a new bat related superhero, and now we have a million of them in Gotham. But I like how he left roses for his own family. And well,
Mhm.
actually, those don't even look like roses. I don't know what kind of flowers they are. They're red, but
Carnations, who knows?
carnations. Yeah, it's fine. And then he left them on Wong's,
Yeah.
both of her parents' grave, and then Otis Flanagan, which that was the rat catcher, because the rat catcher did end up dying, so that was a bummer. Stupid imposter being a jerk.
Yeah. But and that's one of those things like where you can there are very few times just in Batman lore himself where you get humility and the fact that he left flowers for a man he really did not know, but he knows that his being Batman led to his death.
Yeah, and like his, I don't know, like even if it wasn't him behind the mask was, it represented something important to Otis.
Hmm.
And even knowing that it wasn't the true Batman, he still chose to help Bruce in the situation he needed him. So overall, really cool book. I had a great time. Artwork was obviously a highlight. I love how some of these characters drew inspirations from recent movies that we've been seeing, a la the Batman and Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. So, yeah, I love it. I will give it a 4.2 out of 5.
Okay, I give it definitely 4 bats out of 5. Um, I cannot talk, so I cannot stop praising the artwork. It's probably some of the best artwork that I have read and looked at in a very, very, very long time, and I read a lot of
Yeah.
comics. The story was a Batman story. I really love the poking into mental the mental mind of Bruce Wayne, and I constantly stress for that to happen more, or just in the rogues, in heroes in general. Some of my favorite DC comics, like Heroes in Crisis, Harley and Joker, like the ones that tackle being human, even when you're not human, is always so interesting in the
They're the
mind.
best stories. It humanizes the characters, and it can be difficult for a comic book company, because a lot of people are in it for the punchies and the one liners and the action packed sequences and all that good stuff. But yeah, like adding some depth into everything, it's great. That's why I really appreciate the Black Label. They did that Batman 3 Joker storyline as well. Also, one of my favorite stories they've done in quite a decent time. It's one of the best Jason Todd stories that's come out in a decade, I would say. You feel the same?
Of
Batman 3 Jokers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I definitely could see that. I mean, even the Robins right
Right.
now is doing a really good job of, humanizing and really understanding the mental strain and the physical emotional strain it takes to be a child superhero. and what that entails for you in the long run of like how you grow as a person.
Yep, we're in agreement there. That's yeah. DC Black Label, they haven't missed yet. At least nothing that I've read. So hopefully they keep this going. We're gonna keep reading it. The next episode of Comic Book Club, we're gonna do a Doctor Strange book. We haven't decided which one. We're gonna go
I
ahead.
was gonna tell you one that I just picked up because I was looking for a couple of. I was trying to figure out which ones to read before Multiverse of Madness, and I looked at a couple of websites. But there's one that wasn't on there that I think is really interesting. It's called Doctor Strange: The End, and it's like an old Doctor Strange, and from the art.
Oh, dude, you should text me that. Maybe we'll cover that. That'd be kind of neat. But yeah, we're gonna do a co-release with the Marvel Stuff podcast. That's gonna be sick. Hopefully that brings some more fans over here, and you guys can keep geeking out with us about comic books because Noah, you and I are truly in the niche of the niche. So hopefully we get some friends rolling up and understanding exactly what we mean by it. But what else do you have to say in closing for our good friends that gave us their time?
So, all of you cool cats, I don't know why I said that. Anyone who keep paying attention because we got a lot of really cool stuff coming. I got a nerdcore thing that I'm gonna be quizzing Josh on in the next coming weeks. So
Nice.
if you like rap music, if you like comic books, stay tuned.
Yep, that's going to be fun. We're going to do probably another Pitch Me episode. We're going to do some fan casting, keep the ball rolling. Eventually, we'll start covering other TV shows as they come out. But for right now, we're really in this DC pocket. We're going to venture out here and there. But we really hope you're enjoying it. Thank you for listening into the first episode of the Comic Book Club on the Radioactive Paper Cuts podcast. I'm Josh Kennedy. That's Noah King Bates. We love you and have